So election reform is a little bit tricky in New York because one size does not fit all in terms of solutions. Just an example, some people say New York should change to an open primary system so independents or liberals or conservatives can cast their votes without committing to a particular party. A major party, that is. But my next guest says an open primary would actually not fix the state's complicated voting system. Instead, he would like to see some other reforms. Joining me in the studio is Peter Lavenia. He is the co-chair of the state Green Party. Welcome into Capitol tonight.
Hi, thank you.
So first, let us say you did not vote yesterday.
I did not vote yesterday.
Would you have voted for somebody had you had the opportunity?
No, I'm a Green, not a Democrat or Republican. So.
Right, so that's interesting because not all Greens, well, let's say this, not all third-party members or officials are purists. And we do have fusion voting in New York,
sure.
Right? So that is something that, for example, the Working Families Party likes to cross-endorse, and they endorsed Bernie Sanders and were very instrumental in campaigning for him, even though their members could not vote for him because of our closed primary system.
Right.
So is your argument that would you like to, for example, and I've spoken to other Greens who would like to do away with fusion voting because they think it dilutes the power of a party and its ballot line?
Sure. Well, I think we'd like to do it with fusion voting because we'd like to see parties stand on the principles that they run in candidates. Because, with fusion voting, the problem is that people can be confused or they can look at a candidate and say, well, they're running on the Democratic line, they're running on working families, independents, oftentimes conservative as well. I mean, what does that candidate really stand for? The Green Party has decided that we're not going to allow cross-endorsements or fuse with other party lines because we believe that we want to represent green values, progressive values, and we think the best way to do that is by building the Green Party on one line. Unfortunately, with fusion voting, what you find is that it's difficult for the Green Party and for many other smaller parties to compete in elections here in New York State because of it. So what we're actually advocating is proportional representation here in New York.
What does that mean?
Well, what that means is that you would find on the ballot a choice of a party or a candidate. There are different systems, and the percentage of the vote that party or candidate receives would be the percentage of seats that they receive in the legislature. So what we found...
You could do that in some certain European countries, for example.
Many other democracies have proportional voting. And what you find is that people's votes are counted more accurately in those places. In fact, when you look at yesterday, the Democrats counted their delegate selection proportionally. We feel that if the Democrats can do it in the primary, if the Republicans do it in the primary, it's something of a small step to count everybody's votes in the general.
So the way that things are set up now, I mean, by keeping yourselves ideologically pure, for example, and not cross-endorsing, you also slow your own progress. I mean, sort of. For example, it was very difficult for you to get ballot status.
Sure.
You need to have your gubernatorial candidate. For you, it was Howie Hawkins, who hit this magic threshold, arbitrary magic threshold of 50,000 votes. Whoever picked that up, could have been 37,439 or whatever it was, whoever. Anyway, 50,000. And once you get that, you no longer have to go through this arduous petition process of getting on the ballot. So you're good for 4 years. You automatically can get back on the ballot. But if you were fusion voting or fusion cross-endorsing, would that make it easier or not easier? Or the individual that you endorse has to be a member of your party in order for that to work?
We have decided that they have to be a member of the party or they have to be someone who's willing to become a member of the party. We'd like Greens to run as Greens, just as we'd like Democrats to run as Democrats and Republicans to run as Republicans instead of cross-endorsed on all kinds of lines. So yes, it is unfortunately, given the fact that we don't have public financing of elections and we don't have proportional representation and it's difficult for people to get on the ballot, it slowed our progress. But where we have made progress, we've made it as Greens and not as cross-endorsed Democrats or Republicans, because very often we've found in places in the past where Greens had been elected as Democrat Greens or working families Greens, the media and people in the public will perceive them as another line first because it's just easier to remember them as Democrats or working families.
But why would you not want so-called blanks, like myself, for example? I'm not affiliated with any party.
Sure.
We call us also small I independents, which is also somewhat confusing because there's an independence party, and I think sometimes people end up in the wrong place, which is a topic for a different show.
Sure.
That said, I mean, why would you want to deny me the opportunity, unaffiliated with everybody, to vote in your primary? I mean, maybe I would want to vote in the Green Party primary because I feel affiliated with Greens, but not strongly enough to register.
Right. Well, we think that people have a right to participate in any party that they want to, or choose not to be in a party. So 27% of New Yorkers have chosen to be small I independents.
Yeah, it's
and we
growing, actually.
Yeah, it is. And we think that one of the reasons it's growing is because we don't have proportional representation. We don't have parties that actually represent those people's ideas, or the ability for those parties to actually win seats easily in the legislature. So it's not that we want to deny you the right to participate in our primary, but we feel that there's nothing wrong with saying if you want to be a Green or a Democrat or a Republican, there should be a minimum standard, and that should be becoming part of that party. We're not asking you to pay dues. We're simply asking you to say, yes, I'm a Green and I have a minimum standard. It's just like you would be a part of any other club. You know, you wouldn't expect the Sierra Club or the NRA to just say, well, you know, anyone can vote in our elections for officers. We're saying the same thing.
Well, and they charge too.
Right, and we don't.
So, but then how, in your proportional voting scenario, how would I be represented as a blank?
Well, you know, I feel that as a blank, you've made a choice to say that I don't necessarily affiliate with any party. But the difference is that you may say, you know, in a year or 2 years, when you look at who's on the ballot, what parties could potentially gain access. So the Libertarians, Greens, Socialists, you name it. You know, proportional countries have all kinds of different parties representing different ideas. You might say, well, actually, you know, this party best represents my interests. They actually have a chance to get into the legislature. Maybe I'll affiliate with them, or I'll decide to vote with them.
Well, how do you feel then about making it easier for people to register, switch their registration? So in other words, maybe one election cycle I feel more in line with the Green ideology, and then in another election cycle I feel more aligned with a libertarian ideology.
I think that would be great. Senator Liz Krueger has a bill in the legislature right now to make it 90 days for a change before a primary. And we think that that would be a pretty sensible standard.
But not same day. Some places have same day.
Well, we think it should be same day registration for the general election. We don't think it should be same day switching. So if you had same day switching, it would be easy or easier for a party to say raid another party's ballot line. Hijack, yeah. But we think 90 days is fine. And we also think that you know, there should be an automatic way that people are registered. California and Oregon are moving towards this. They've passed bills that say people should be put on the voter rolls through their DMV records. And other countries do this pretty easily and pretty well. Our neighbor to the north has 93% voter registration through this.
Well, do they have 93 voter participation?
They have much higher voter participation than we do. Yesterday saw a turnout of about 30% for the primaries in the Republican and Democratic races. But we think we should be able to do better in the general in the United States. If Canada can do it, why not us?
Well, and also though there's there's the question of getting this stuff through the legislature. I mean, that's obviously quite difficult.
Well, I think that's a tough issue. I think you can obviously see that there were many people who have protested. There's a lawsuit, and there's investigations going about people who have been purged from the voter rolls in Brooklyn since last November. You know, there's obviously something wrong with the way that elections are being administered. We should look into this. We should look into forming nonpartisan boards of elections. Take it out of the hands of the two parties that have a vested interest in making it perhaps more difficult for people to vote. I don't have high hopes that our legislature is going to pass these reforms. I would like them to, because I think that we deserve a democracy that represents us. It shouldn't be too much to ask for our legislature, which is supposed to be representing the will of the voters, to turn around and be able to institute common sense reforms.
Does the Green Party have a position on a constitutional convention? Because that might be one place that some of these reforms would be more easily wrought.
I think right now it would be interesting to look at the Constitutional Convention. We haven't taken an official stance, but I think it might be a place in the future where we'd be able to subject those kind of things to the will of the voters in a way that the legislature seems to be permanently blocked because of different competing special interests.
So yesterday, though, I mean, in some ways, and I've been saying this for a couple of days now, it was all this attention that was paid to us was a good thing, because the people had this opportunity to really learn. They got all sort of fired up about participating, and then they got the opportunity to learn that actually no, they couldn't because of our really restrictive rules. So if a byproduct is that we start talking about these things in a more realistic way, then that's positive.
I think it is very positive. You know, it's something that the Greens have been saying for a long time. We need to have more democracy, expanded choice. And look, we're the fourth most populous state in the nation. This is the first time a primary election for president has been this important in a very long time. So if it sheds light on what we need to do to reform voting laws here in New York and hopefully across the nation, I do think it's a good thing.
So just before I let you go, though, do you not worry about the possibility of making the system by mistake, if you will, more complicated, because you'll have all of these parties with various different statuses, right? So you'll have not just X number of parties that have ballot affiliation, but maybe you'll have 10 parties with ballot affiliation or 20 parties with ballot affiliation, and that could be potentially confusing, and people switching back and forth all over the place.
Sure. Well, I think, two things. One, I think voters are smart, and I think that they understand when they go into a voting booth, who they're voting for, and I think that they'll be able to educate themselves, And two, in all the countries where they have proportional representation, there's a minimum threshold that parties have to reach in order to gain that kind of status, usually about 5%. So that seems logical to me. But, I think that we should trust voters in being able to have more choices. If we can have more choices for, many kinds of things in our lives, we shouldn't be limited in the amount of parties we can choose.
Before I let you go, I do want to just ask you sort of an unrelated question. I mean, you do have ballot status for the next 4 years. Now, how many candidates are you guys running this year? Now, we don't have statewide races, actually, but you do have a number of active congressional races, and I do know that Mr. Funicello, for example, is running again in the North Country, and there are other areas where you perhaps could pick up some ground.
It's true. Matt Funicello is running in NY21 in the North Country. We have another congressional candidate downstate, and we have a number of people who are going to be running for the state legislature who will be collecting in June. And of course, we're going to have a presidential convention in Troy on June 11th, and this is going to include a number of people, including our former presidential candidate Jill Stein, who's running again for the nomination.
Who's been on this show, and we've spoken to her, and we will follow up with you about your convention as well. Peter, I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Liz.